Welcome, everybody, back to the Transform Your Birth podcast. With me today is the lovely Jemima, and Jemima has a little boy called Jules, and she gave birth at home, and it's lovely to have a home birth story. It's the first one we've had. So, Jemima, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.
Yeah. Now, I just want to check in on you. How were you during your pregnancy? What's your journey been like so far? So how were you feeling about giving birth? And let us in on a little bit of your preparation and how you started to get yourself ready.
Well, Jules is actually my little boy's my second birth actually, but I have an older child who's 22, so it's been a long time between drinks. And in terms of preparation, I did your wonderful Transform Your Birth class, and well, my husband and I did that with you, and it really helped me reframe a story that I'd had about my first birth, in that I was sort of weak and sort of gave up 1,000 times.
Oh,
And
wow.
coming into this birth, I think when I first got pregnant with Jules, I actually had a little bit of a meltdown thinking about giving birth again.
Yeah.
Because I was quite afraid actually of the pain of labor. And
Right.
doing your course, which was obviously one of our preparation things, was what came up for me was this idea that, this birth, I kind of wanted to be a little bit of a heroine, and I kind of wanted to be strong and powerful. And I realized that in creating that expectation for myself, that actually I may not live up to it. I may not always feel strong. And I had to reframe that for myself. And one thing I did was my goal was just to accept whatever came my way. And I keep remembering you saying, and birth with love. So I think reframing that goal really helped in my preparation, because it helped me to think about the empowering aspects of giving birth, and that actually I didn't need to be frozen by the pain, but I could work with the pain. And
Yeah.
so I guess learning some tips and tricks to help me with that. And mainly what helped me mostly with my birth was anchoring to my breath. Was I saw my breath, when I reflect on it afterwards, as a tether, to help me with my pain management. That was my main form of managing the pain.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating what you've described around the expectations that you had of yourself to be strong, to be empowered, to be a bit of a heroine. Where did that idea come from? Can you identify that?
Yeah, I don't know actually. Yeah, I don't know where that idea came from, but I think, I carried this story about myself for nearly 22 years, that somehow I'd failed because I found birth really, really hard.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was preparing for, this birth with my little boy, that I realized that I had been judging myself harshly. And I would probably argue that it's a cultural thing that we place on ourselves as women, just to be hard on ourselves and to be judgmental and critical.
Yeah.
And I more broadly, I feel like that's I can be quite judgmental and critical. So I
Mm.
think that's where that idea came from. But it wasn't until really recently that I was able to unpack it and go, actually, that was not true.
Yeah.
I was not weak, in that moment. So it took a very long time to unpack it and change it.
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic that you brought up, Jemima, is I think some of the ideas that we have as women that we bring to the party when it comes to having a baby. And it can be based on other people's stories, some sort of ideal that we've tapped into of women being empowered, women reigning supreme. And the reality is birth is designed to wake us up. It's designed to wake us up to the fact that we're more than what we think. And sometimes that waking up process looks different for every woman. For some women, you know, maybe they've had a straightforward vaginal birth and they feel amazing, and they get the big hormonal high and they feel like they can do anything. And they feel empowered by that. We use the word empowerment a lot. And then there can be another woman who has a birth that potentially has really taken her to the edge of herself, has cut her off at the knees, has caused her to feel vulnerable, has caused her to feel like, you know, she couldn't handle it, or she, you know, really just almost a part of her got a bit decimated through that process of birth. And we can judge that very harshly. When I've explored those types of experiences with women, what I point out to them is that your seeds of empowerment are sitting right inside of there, because at the end of the day, we can't control this thing called birth. And sometimes the hardest births, the births that take us to the edge of ourselves, which help crack us open and wake us up, can be even more powerful than the straightforward, uncomplicated births. And over the years, as I watch women's journey, and I watch it long enough, you know, as you watch her, how she comes to terms with how the birth went, what sort of decision she makes as a result of it, and then watch that translate into her parenting. What I've learned over the years is no birth is ever in vain, and every birth is there to teach us. And sometimes our lessons come in less than, or in ways that we potentially wouldn't choose, but are just as powerful and profound in terms of waking her up. So it's really interesting how we can come to this with ideas that it should look a certain way or be a certain way, and that we should perform, when really what birth's asking us to do is take a walk into the mystery, take a walk into a place that we can't control, and the sensations might really take us to the edge of what we think we can cope with. But there's power in that, even though it's a vulnerable place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really agree with that. I see birth as an initiation into parenting, or into, I don't know, another aspect of womanhood. And for me, just before I had Jules, when I was in that sort of pre-labor space, I felt like I was kind of, this is kind of a metaphor, analogy. I was sort of standing on the edge of a cliff, and I just knew that I had to I was just going to let myself fall, and that I was going to fall into not knowing how this was going to be, but knowing that I had some more skills and tools than I previously had to help me through, but also knowing that actually it's totally the mystery I was entering into. And I knew that there would come a time in my birth process where I would really struggle, and I would have to work through that, which I think is the initiation process.
Yeah, that's where the power is. Yeah. I think we need to worry less about what it looks like and what we look like and whether we perform or not, and more about just taking a leap of faith to trust that even if it gets hard, even if you feel like you've been cut off at the knees, even if you need help, even if birth gets complex, there's beauty to that as well. It's not always an easy message to hear, but it's certainly something I've observed over the years. Thank you for bringing that up. That's really interesting. So you started to make the shift around how you felt. You started to reframe even your first birth, which would have been very powerful. What was it like when you went into labour? Where were you up to when you started to go into labour? Tell us about that.
I think I was in sort of, I don't know if you'd call it the very early stages of labour. For the couple of weeks before Jules was born, I was having more than Braxton Hicks. I was having some very, very mild contractions. And then I think maybe 3 days before he was born, I lost my mucus plug, and it was all like, oh, this is happening. And you know, because, you know, my husband and I had, you know, visualized this time, we'd use some of your meditations to sort of visualize our birth. And I'd also done some prenatal yoga and, you know, all these preparations to kind of help us to see this early stages of labor, you know, as this little cocoon time for us to kind of enjoy. So My husband kind of left work on a Tuesday, and everyone was like, what, your wife's in labor, why aren't you hightailing it out of here? And it was like, I'm fine. I just sort of texted him and said, look, I've lost my mucus plug, but don't rush. I'm totally fine. It's all kind of early days. So we were just in a love bubble for a couple of days before Jules was born. We made him a birthday cake, and then my midwife came on the Wednesday, and basically told me that unfortunately Jules was posterior, which did throw me mentally.
Yeah.
So all that good work that I'd been doing, I did ebb and wane out of like a little bit of fear back to trust, a bit of fear back to trust. And hearing that he was posterior did throw me mentally. And my husband told me later that he nearly rang the midwife and said to her, hey, look, don't mention it again. But of course, she actually didn't, because she had the wisdom to, I knew that she knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that that he was posterior during labor. But I knew also that she was withholding that so that she wasn't, there was no need to bring a fear-based sort of ideas into my mind. So, look, and my contractions were really sporadic and all over the place, and nothing was kind of progressing. And my waters had broken, and it had been about a day and a half after my waters had broken. I can't remember the time frame. And my midwife said, how about you try acupuncture? We need to sort of get things sort of ticking along now. And I tried acupuncture, and that did the trick. And on Thursday, from about lunchtime, the contractions were really consistent. And they just kind of kept going consistently. We just the couple of nights before our baby was born, we went to bed early. We slept like beautifully. My midwife and my mum, my birth team, were all like on tenterhooks. They admitted later we weren't sleeping. We were wondering what was going on with you guys. And we were just, knowing that we needed to get the rest we needed. So we just went to bed at 8:00, stayed in our little love bubble, putted around at home. It was it was actually a really beautiful time. And it's something that we really wanted to create coming into it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Or talking about the birth story? Yeah.
So you had a fairly long sort of pre-labory type experience, and you did describe, going from fear to trust and posterior and working with that. Was there a point in your labor where there was less thinking and more just in the moment? Do you remember starting to really move out of any concerns around the posterior and
less thinking and more in the moment? I think I just let it go with the posterior thing. I just sort of chose not to focus on it. And when I compare the amount of pain that I was experiencing relative to my first birth, it didn't actually feel more painful. And and people were like, oh, posterior birth, that's meant to be more painful. And I was like, well, I think with the tools I was using, I didn't really even come into it. I think I was so focused on being in the zone and focusing on tethering myself to my breath. Like it was like I clung to my breath and just really that calm breathing, and had a meditation on that. I think that all those things together were helping me to just be in the moment rather than in fear. There was only one point where I moved into fear, which was in transition. And the rest of the time, I just felt like I was moving, just tracking along with the process.
Right. Beautiful. Can you describe for us, Jemima, the tethering to the breath? Like, what did that really look like and feel like to you when you were in it?
Sorry, hang on, Tracy. My sister's talking and it's really putting me off.
Just hang on.
Sorry.
I'll just pause.
Yeah, so during your birth class, I learn about calm breath. I'm also a meditator. I've been meditating for a long time, so it was familiar to me. I also learned Ujjayi breath that I learned in a prenatal yoga class. So I was using Ujjayi breath, which is basically where I would breathe in slowly, pause, and breathe out really slowly. And the Ujjayi breath is sort of where you kind of breathe a little bit more through your throat. And I was really I guess every time a contraction came, what I was doing was using that breath to help calm my nervous system. And I found it to be the number one. I mean, I had a home birth, so there was no access to drugs at home, but I found it to be such an effective pain relief for me. Honestly, I was religious about clinging to that breath. And I had to be really, really mentally tough to hold it and stay with it. Because if I wobbled out of it and into fear and into restriction, the pain would be greater. So that's what I was doing. But in addition to that, I also had your birth meditation happening in the background, just as so that my mind wouldn't kind of go to dark places, because it's so easy for that to happen. And we know the mind-body connection. And I really needed to stay positive. And when I was doing my prenatal yoga class, our yoga instructor was always basically during our meditation in the beginning was talking about, having an affirmation that we could use during birth. And in my mind, not all the time during that breath, I was using the affirmation, every contraction brings me closer to my baby. But I had to be mentally tough to really anchor to those things to help me through. So as much as a mind, it was much as a, it was much of a mind workout as it was a body workout, the labor for me.
Yeah, many midwives and doulas, and I've been one of them, will tell you that birth is not a physical challenge, it is a mental challenge. Keeping your mind focused on what you want, not what you don't want, is part of the process of working with birth, not against it, because the mind is the thing that can really pull you out of that zone. So I'm really glad you've gone into detail with that. I think that's really powerful. So tell us how your labour and birth progressed.
Yeah, so basically on the Thursday night, my partner and I went to bed. He slept for 2 or 3 hours. I did not sleep. So at that point, my contractions were like, they were super manageable. I mean, all afternoon, it just felt like kind of pretty bad period pain. I can't remember how far they were apart, but at about 11 p.m. on the Thursday night, I woke my partner up and I was like, okay, I can't manage on my own anymore. I need a bit of support. And we got out the TENS machine and my partner bumbled with attaching it. We bumbled using it. And it was just like, nah, this was taking me out of my process and away from my breathing. It was taking my partner away from being, I guess, really present to me, because he was playing with the machine and it was like he wasn't with me and I needed him to be present to me. So I just, I just was like, let's get rid of it. It's just not helping me. It's actually making it more painful because of it feels like a diversion.
Right.
So I felt like that. Sorry.
Interesting.
Different
things work for different people.
And I felt like that early stage of labor was like, a bit of forming and storming before we moved into the norming of, oh, this is our pace and rhythm for how we do this. Because of course, you come to birth with, hopefully a bunch of tools and you're like, okay, what are we going to use? Like, you have no idea how that's going to be. And for me, from about 11 p.m. that night till literally 3 a.m. the next morning, I was Little Spoon, husband was Big Spoon. My baby sister was Big Spoon at one point when my husband went and filled up the birth pool. And I just remained in that position literally for must have been about 5 hours, going through the contractions, focusing on my breathing. I had the meditation on. And I also used an app as well to time my contractions. For some reason, I would have thought that having an app to time contractions might have been a distraction away from being internalized, but actually, in a way, it helped tether me to, okay, what was happening. It sort of gave me a bit of context or perspective and sort of helped. So it felt like maybe it was I could see things progressing, perhaps,
Yeah,
you know. And it was me that prompted hubby to go, contractions are 3 minutes apart, we should call the midwife. So over those sort of 5 hours of that, I don't know, would you call that active? Would that be active labor, Tracy? I get confused about the stages of labor.
Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway,
It
whatever
was the
stage it
labour.
was. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So at some point, mum might have come at about 1 a.m. I think my sister came at 2 a.m. and then the midwife came at 3 a.m. And then at 3:30 a.m., our beautiful midwife sort of was like, okay, you know, she was like, can you feel that feeling of like pushing in your bottom? And I was like, yeah, I can feel it just, you know. And she was like, all right, it might be time to, you know, get in the birth pool. And so we moved out into the lounge room. I had this beautiful birth space set up. We had fairy lights, and I had bunting with affirmations on it, and low lighting. And yeah, so I got in the birth pool, and I think I labored for a couple of hours there. And I think that the trickiest thing for me really about my labor, like I look back and I think, yeah, no, I managed really well with, you know, the breath and everything. And you know, I just clung to my husband. My husband was just like totally beside me, didn't leave me for, well, he did leave me for maybe 5 minutes when he filled up the birth pool, and that's when my little sister became Big Spoon. But other than that, he was there in with me. And at around, yeah, it must have been about 5:30, I think I started to go through transition. So I started to get to this point where Jules, our baby, was in the birth canal. I actually had no idea about where he was or how far I had to go. I just was completely clueless about how far along I actually was. And I started to really sketch out and become really over it at this point. I just got to the point where I was like, you know, I looked at my mom and I just was like, I just want to be on the other side of this. I just am so, I never said I can't do it anymore, but I just said, I just need this to be over. Like I've had enough now, you know?
Yeah.
And I remember going through my contractions, and every time a contraction was coming up, I'd be like, oh, you know, fudge. Like I won't use a swear word, but it was like, because I knew it was coming, and I'd put my head in the water and feel like, oh, I just want to drown myself here. So that became really difficult. And that's when my midwife really stepped in, and she just really held my hand, because fears started to really arise for me around, you know, the risk of tearing. And, you know, I became quite afraid. And I think I said to someone at one point, you know, I've got so long to go. And then my midwife said, actually, Jemima, you don't. She said, why don't you feel up inside yourself? And I was like, okay. So I felt up inside my vagina, and my little boy's head was, and I didn't know he was a boy at this point. It was all mystery. But he was literally, I would say, about 2 centimeters inside my vagina. Like he was so just sitting there, patiently waiting for me to be ready. And then my husband did the same. And then we had this beautiful moment. The coach in him came out, and he kind of, it was like, right, you know, he came down real close, and he looked at me and he was like, are you ready to meet our baby? And I was like, yes. And I was crying, and he's like, and I said, are you ready? He's like, yes. And we were like, and he's like, all right, gonna give it all you've got, you know. So I'll always remember how special that moment was. And then my midwife, just because I was afraid, and because I don't know, like, you know, everyone always says, oh, you know, when you want to push the baby out, it's just this instinctual thing, like you feel like you just got to push and you can't stop it. And I know that's the case for a lot of women, but I didn't feel that. And maybe I don't know why I didn't feel that that drive to push. I felt like I had to really work at the pushing. I don't know whether it was because Jules was posterior and he wasn't like in an ideal position, but he did actually, my midwife said he did actually move into the right position in the birth canal, or when he moved into the birth canal, which I hear is common as well. So my midwife basically just talked me through, okay, this is what you're going to do, and then this is what you're going to do. And I actually just really needed that support at that moment, because I was just in a lot of fear, and she actually helped me work through my fear. And she's like, what are you afraid of? And I said, I don't know. I think I'm afraid I'm going to tear. And so she was just like, this is what you're going to do. And that really helped me. And then she was just like, I think we need to do something different here. I think I hear when birth is sort of stalled, the smart midwives will go, all right, maybe we need to do something different. So it was like, okay, how do you feel about going, into the bathroom and sitting over the toilet? And I was like, whatever, I'm yours. Tell me what to do. Because I was just at that point where I was like, I am stuck and I am struggling here and I need help, And so I, very carefully got out of the birth pool and waddled into our ensuite and sat on the toilet and, was, pushing quite hard. And then it was like, oh, this is not working. And the midwife was like, all right, back out to the birth pool. Why don't we stand next to the birth pool? And then that was like extremely painful. It was like, no, this is not working for me. So that was like a hell no. And then so back to the toilet we went. And basically I was at that point in birth. I don't know whether everyone gets to this point, but it was like, okay, I don't want to put people off, but it was like, I can't do this anymore. I've really had enough. I really need to push this baby out. I just need to see my baby and I need to be on the other side of this and I've got to give it all I've got. So I went back into the toilet and within 2 pushes, Jules's head was out. And I think my midwife was quite surprised at that point. I was like, oh, the head's out. And I see her kind of leap up and grab the torch. And then she directed me to stand up, and his cord was sort of looped around his neck. And she was like, just hold on, don't push again. I'm just going to unloop the cord. She said very calmly. And I wasn't at all. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to push until there's another contraction. Like, it's fine. And at the same time, she was coaching my husband to, to get into position, because he caught our little boy. That's what he decided he wanted to do, which was just delightful. And so second contraction and Jules was born, in a whoosh of, there was still amniotic fluid, lots of amniotic fluid, and we didn't know we were having a boy. And my husband was, putting his genitals in front of my face and going, we have a boy. And he was just tears streaming down his face.
Wow.
It was just, we're both crying. And it was really, really lovely. And then I sat on the toilet and Jules was brought to my chest, and warm towels that had been in the oven were put over us. And it was really special. I was shocked we had a boy, because I was convinced we were having a girl. So I was quite stunned. And I think one of the first things I said was, but we don't have a boy's name. And so it was quite a funny moment.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself, Jemima?
I think it's just a deepening of letting go into the unknown and knowing that you can control aspects of life. Because I see birth as, this is a little bit philosophical, but I see birth as an amplification of life. Like, we don't know what we're going to get, and we, to a degree, have to just enter the mystery and let go of knowing how things are going to turn out, and to trust that things are going to be okay. But also, because I had new tools, I also learned that actually I can control how things, how I respond to things happening to me. Because I felt very empowered by this birth with the tools that I had. So I guess I learned that I am strong, but I'm also able to let go more deeply.
And have a sense of your own agency is what you're describing, really, isn't it? Like capability. Yeah, wow. And what would you tell a pregnant woman?
I would say to do your course.
Oh, thank you. Nice little plug there.
What would I say? I guess Preparation really is key. It is really important to prepare, and for me, a lot of visualizing around, you know, the feelings I wanted to have,
Mm,
particularly during the lead up to labor. So I think I really made some decisions to digest positive information, to send myself positive messages, to listen to, guided meditations with, affirming messages, and also, to just really delight in it, like you're going through this process and at the end of it, you're going to meet your beautiful baby.
mm,
So delight in it and enjoy it, and, make the birthday cake, or, have that, that cocoon time my husband and I had,
mm,
leading up to more active labor was really special, so I'd say just remember to enjoy it, and it's beautiful, and you can actually manage your labor through your breath. I just found that so powerful, using
mm.
my breath. It's an
Wow.
amazing form of pain relief.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Mm.
that's beautiful. I love, when people bring in those sort of details in their early labour where they make a cake or do those special things, because that interweaves itself into the story, and the story becomes much bigger
Mm.
than the part where you're at the hospital and you push your baby out and that's it. The story really is a pathway, and it starts through pregnancy and it continues on from that early labour where you're just starting to adjust and get yourself ready for the birth and managing the sensations, and then it builds up in intensity, and then you transfer or not, depending on where you give birth,
Mm.
and then the baby's born, and then the pathway continues. It's just one long story, really, isn't it?
Mm. It
Yeah.
is, yeah. And we made an orange and poppy seed cake, and so we'll probably every birthday will be like orange and poppy seed cake, So
A
it
new
was,
tradition, family tradition.
yeah, it was just really lovely to,
Yeah.
I remember sitting there with my little sister who just, loves babies, and just hung out for the rest of the day. And we were like, oh, let's eat cake. And, I've got this photo of her and I've got Jules on me, and we're eating this cake,
Oh,
sitting up with my legs
so
up, and,
lovely.
in this cocoon of the glow of, just having a newborn baby,
Yeah,
it's just,
yeah.
such special memories.
Yeah, and in your own home too. When you listen
Mm.
to stories like this, it makes sense why women do choose to birth at home. That's a question, Jemima, I didn't ask you.
Mm.
Tell us about your decision making to have a home birth.
Yeah, I'll try keep it short, because it is a kind of a long story.
Yep.
Well, I'm one of 8 children, so I'm from a really big family, and my mum is a bit of a trailblazer in our family with home birth. So mum has had she had 4 hospital births, and she went on to have 4 home births. And so mum had, you know, I guess back in the day, I mean, I don't know. Anyway, I won't get into the politics of birth, but
Yeah.
mum had some not very nice experiences with us older 4, and decided she wanted to do something different. So had 4 at home. So
Mm,
I kind of grew up seeing my younger siblings being born. So it's something that I was exposed to from a really, quite a young age, as a child, really.
yeah.
And so I grew up seeing people have their babies at home, in this safe, comfortable space. And then I guess when I went to uni as well, I was like, I'm going to write an essay and really look at this, home birth versus, and it was not home birth versus hospital birth, but it was like, what are the distinctions between, a safe and healthy birth for mother and baby, and it's women being empowered with their choices that I saw was
Mm,
the distinctive bit. And so for me, it was, having a home birth and the safety of my home, with tools that empower me. So
mm,
essentially, it was what I was exposed to, and what I had looked at in terms of a model of care that I thought was safe and best for me and my baby and my husband. And
mm,
thankfully, he hadn't had a home birth before. His previous baby was birthed in hospital, and
right.
he was totally on board. And so I was grateful for that. I didn't have to kind of convince him.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he was just, yep, totally on board, totally on board. He, will tell anyone now, yep, have a home birth, best thing ever.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
so
That's
yeah.
fantastic. And when you met your midwife, did that install confidence around that decision making?
Yeah, it did. And I lucky home births are in the family. We often use the same practitioners as well. But my brother and sister-in-law had their baby sort of a year and a half before Jules was born, and they'd used this midwife, and they just spoke so highly of her that when I felt pregnant, I had a conversation with her. And at that point, I was a little ambivalent about, would I go to a birthing center this time? Would I have a home birth? Like, what do I value? What do I feel? you know and in my mind I was like, I don't know if I want to go gung-ho and go the no pain relief route, not having really understood actually that there's these natural forms of pain relief that are just as effective.
Yeah.
And I spoke to this home birth midwife and had a conversation about my age, and because I'm over 40, she just said, look, obviously do what you want, but if you go to hospital, you will be to a degree fighting the system. They might want to induce you, and then there's a cascade of interventions and this and that. And I just thought, no, I don't think I'm going to be strong enough to fight that. I think I really need to, it's hard enough giving birth, let alone being, potentially in a system that is going to see me a particular way as a, a quote unquote geriatric mother. So for me, that was a big push for the home birth. Otherwise I might have considered a birthing center or something like that. I've heard some really positive experiences from that sort of a scenario.
Yeah. It's the only birth process that is truly undisturbed. Going from home to hospital disturbs the process. Even if we stay calm and we do our very best not to, tune in to the traffic or the car or anything like that, it's still a disruption of labour. And when women are in their nest, in that safe space, then they're more likely to create the perfect physiology for the progress and the support of that labour. So it is a beautiful option for women who feel that they feel safe there. It's wherever women feel safe. The midwives who practice home birth are often highly, highly skilled, very intuitive. They can read labours that are progressing well, and generally have confidence that things are going well, and read the signs early if they need to transfer. Home births do sometimes they need to transfer to get a bit of extra help for the mum. So it's not like if you choose a home birth, you're stuck at home. You can transfer, and they facilitate that, and they stay with you during that transfer. You're not competing with other women birthing at the same time as you. You've got her total and undivided attention. They typically have 2 midwives that come and back each other up. So it really is gold standard service in terms of attention. You've got their total attention.
It was excellent. And we also, she was there for our prenatal, there for our postnatal. She's also a lactation consultant, and I had issues with lactation. So then we were seeing her. So in terms of a model of care, we've got someone who knows us, who knows our baby, seen our baby, through, for months, for months we've got this this continuity of care with this one person. And it's so true what you say about, you may not, if you choose to have a home birth, you may not birth at home, because my brother and sister-in-law, who had the same midwife, had to transfer to hospital. But every step of the way with that, they felt completely empowered, because the midwife basically stayed with them the whole time, and each step of the way really clearly explained all of the choices and helped them make the decisions. And they went away from their hospital birth feeling really empowered, and like all went as best as it possibly could, because that's what they needed at that point. And so they didn't leave feeling like, oh, ripped off, we wanted a home birth and we didn't get one, or things happened to us that we didn't want. They felt empowered by that process too. So
that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jemima. I really have appreciated you sharing your story today. I think it's lovely for women to realise that there are different options of models of care, and to explore that if that feels right for them. To understand that birth is not about performing. It's not about being a super heroine or anything like that. It's just really about walking into the mystery, having a sense of your own capability, finding things to anchor yourself to, like you did with your breath, having a partner who's really well prepared and knows how to be very, very attentive. It sounds like he was a wonderful support for you through that. being able to communicate with your carers and who were so skilled and beautiful in the way they were able to support you, and also having your family there. That was a lovely thing too, to share that
Mm,
with your mother and your sister.
mm.
And little Jules will be very special to them because they were there at his birth, and they'll be
Yeah.
able to tell him stories of his birth.
Yeah, it certainly creates connection.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
yeah, just telling us a story that can really inspire women to open their minds to what is possible in birth. And even a geriatric such as yourself, lovely Jemima, nice language, can come out and yeah, and feel just so transformed through that process. So
Mm.
thank you so much again for sharing that. It's been a really lovely conversation.
My
Thanks,
pleasure. Thanks,
Jemima.
Tracy.
Okay.